He walked into the bank wearing a sharp suit, confidence in every step. Nobody batted an eye. They just saw another black man asking for a business loan. The staff smiled politely, but behind the smiles was something colder. He was calm, respectful, and well-prepared, with all the right paperwork. Still, they gave him the runaround. Excuses, doubts, then finally a rejection. They told him he didn't meet their standards. What they didn't know, he owned the bank. This wasn't just a case of mistaken identity, it was a moment that exposed something deeper. This man wasn't just a CEO. He was the founder of the very financial institution that had just turned him away. And the employees who denied him? They had no idea who they were talking to. The next 7 minutes changed everything. This is a story about power, perception, and how easily people can misjudge others based on appearance alone. It's about leadership, accountability, and a lesson some people had to learn the hard way. But what happened after he revealed the truth? Did he confront them? Forgive them? Or something else entirely? Stay with me, because what he did next, you won't see coming. Just 7 minutes earlier, he had walked in like any other client. No security, no assistant, no sign of status. He wanted to see how his team handled real people, how they treated someone they didn't recognize, someone they assumed had no power. This wasn't just a random visit, it was a test. He had built that bank from scratch. Years ago, doors were slammed in his face, and investors told him no one would take a black-owned bank seriously. But he proved them wrong. The bank grew, community by community, with a focus on trust and opportunity, especially for people who looked like him and had been overlooked for too long. So when he stood in that branch lobby, patiently explaining his loan request, he wasn't just checking their customer service. He was watching who they really were when no one was watching them. The manager barely looked at his application. The loan officer asked questions with a tone that didn't sit right. They acted like they were doing him a favor just by hearing him out. He kept quiet, nodding, letting them talk. Every second, they dug themselves deeper. The rejection wasn't about his numbers. They were flawless. It was about assumptions, and he knew it. But they still didn't know who was sitting in front of them. Not yet. Back in his car, just outside the building he owned, he sat quietly for a moment. Not angry, just disappointed. This wasn't just about him being denied a loan. It was about what that denial represented. The very culture he worked hard to avoid was growing inside his own walls. And the worst part, these employees weren't new. They had gone through training, sat in on meetings where he spoke about respect, fairness, and serving the community. Somewhere along the way, they'd forgotten. Inside the branch, the staff carried on like nothing had happened. They were already moving on to the next customer, laughing, answering phones. No clue that their world was about to shift. Meanwhile, the CEO made a call, not to scold, but to confirm records. He wanted to see how often similar loan rejections had happened, and what he found didn't sit right. A pattern. Too many people, especially minorities, turned away without valid reasons. That's when it stopped being personal. It was now a systemic issue inside his own company. There was another layer, too. The branch manager? He was recommended by a senior executive, someone the CEO had trusted. Had the culture of bias spread further than just this branch? Or was this a case of one team slipping under the radar? Either way, silence was no longer an option. The next morning, before the branch even opened, he walked through the front doors again. But this time, everything felt different. No disguise, no test. Just the CEO stepping into his own house. The staff were caught off guard. Confused glances, nervous smiles. Some tried to act like nothing happened. But he could see it. The shift in energy, the quiet panic behind their eyes. The manager stepped forward, stammering a greeting, clearly not expecting him. Not like this. He didn't respond right away. Just looked around, taking in every detail. The front desk, the loan officer's office, the security cameras. Everything felt surface level, polished, but shallow. He motioned for everyone to gather. No loud voice, no threats, just calm authority. When he spoke, it was simple. Let's talk about what happened yesterday. Silence. No one wanted to be the first to speak. The loan officer avoided eye contact. The manager shuffled papers he didn't need to touch. He stood in the center, letting the tension rise. Then he placed the loan application they had denied on the table, untouched from the day before. I want you to explain to me, out loud, why this was rejected. More silence. They knew. And now they knew he knew. Upstairs, another call was being made. HR, legal, and his executive team were already in the loop. Something big was coming, and no one could hide from it now. Just as the tension in the room thickened, his phone buzzed. A message from his executive assistant. Asterisk, check your email. Urgent. Asterisk, he paused for a second, then opened it right there in front of the team. What he saw made his jaw tighten, not with surprise, but with disappointment. Attached was a customer complaint that had just come in late last night. A woman, local business owner, same branch, same day, denied a small business loan. Excellent credit, solid business plan, still rejected. And she too was black. The timing couldn't be ignored. He looked up at the room, now even more silent than before. So this wasn't just a mistake with me, he said slowly. It's a pattern. The staff didn't move, but the shift in their faces was clear. Fear, guilt, realization. The loan officer's hands trembled slightly. The manager glanced toward the exit like he wanted to disappear. Then came the second twist. He dropped another document on the table. Internal chat logs. Somehow, through a flagged keyword system used by the compliance team, a thread had surfaced. A casual conversation between a few staff members, laughing about how people try to dress the part, but don't belong. No names were used, but the tone was clear, and worse, it was dated weeks back. This wasn't an isolated moment, it was culture, and it was rooted deeper than he expected. He looked around the room one last time, letting the weight of everything settle. Then, in a calm voice, he said, "You're all dismissed for the day." Confusion spread across their faces, but no one dared to speak. "Security will escort you out. You'll be contacted by HR with next steps." The manager opened his mouth, maybe to defend himself, but the CEO raised a hand. "Save it. We'll talk officially, but not here, not now." As they filed out quietly, the reality hit. They hadn't just judged the wrong person, they'd exposed the cracks in the very foundation of the bank. A foundation he had built on fairness, opportunity, and respect. And now it had been compromised from the inside. Once the room was empty, he sat down in the same chair where he'd been rejected just the day before. For a moment, he didn't say anything, just stared out the window, deep in thought. Then he made another call, not to fire more people, but to set up an emergency board meeting. What he had just uncovered wasn't limited to one branch. The culture needed to change, fast and for good. But just as he hung up, another email came through. This one from someone inside the company, anonymously. It read, "Asterisk, this goes higher than you think. Check the files attached." Asterisk. The real cleanup was only just beginning. The email changed everything. The attached files revealed internal reports, quietly buried, showing similar patterns across multiple branches, loan denials, flagged applications, ignored community outreach efforts. It wasn't just a few bad employees. It was a failure of oversight, leadership, and accountability at a higher level. People he had trusted to protect the bank's mission had turned a blind eye. Within a week, the CEO launched a full internal audit. Policies were rewritten, staff reshuffled, and mandatory bias training enforced at every level. Some executives resigned. Others were let go. But more importantly, the bank's values were put back at the center. He personally met with the woman who was denied a loan, fast-tracked her approval, and offered support through the bank's small business mentorship program. She wasn't just a number. She was the reason he started this journey in the first place. Within a week, the CEO launched a full internal audit. Policies were rewritten, staff reshuffled, and mandatory bias training enforced at every level. Some executives resigned. Others were let go. But more importantly, the bank's values were put back at the center. He personally met with a woman who was denied a loan, fast-tracked her approval, and offered support through the bank's small business mentorship program. She wasn't just a number. She was the reason he started this journey in the first place. The CEO didn't just fire employees. He rebuilt trust. He reminded everyone that leadership isn't just about power, it's about responsibility. In a world where assumptions still shape outcomes, his story became more than just a viral headline. It became a reminder that real change starts from the top, and it happens when someone refuses to stay silent. And that day, he didn't stay silent.